Hello and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis, and it's the goal of all of us here with our program to bring you current and educational information associated with the alcohol and drug epidemic, not only throughout the city of Brockton, but throughout all of our South Shore communities. Tonight's guest is John Greene. John is a resident of the town of Easton, and John is here to share with us the story of the recent passing of his son, Evan Greene, who passed at the age of 19 on January 16, 2014. John, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Larry.
John, what happened?
Well, my son, just an average kid, happy-go-lucky kid, which, moved in a great town of Easton. And, he's doing pretty good up to a certain age. And then he started hanging around, his friends in the town. And they started getting bored and, started... as I seen, started to, get that age where, you start,
experimenting.
Exactly.
And was that just as he's entering high school, or?
Yeah, like junior high, I'd say even junior high, skateboarding, doing the things, and, ride motorcycles, and then, and then all of a sudden you get a certain age where they, they start changing. You don't see them as much, and they're late coming home, and, where are you, this and that, and then excuses and this and that, and just getting bored where you don't see them now, the activities that they used to be in, trying to wake up for school and try to, it's getting a little harder now. It's just the happiness is a little different. Yeah. And that was started like maybe 13, 14, you start seeing little changes, attitudes and stuff. But still not bad, can live with it. And then
thinking it's just part of the adolescent change of age.
Right. Teenager years, and getting in, the way things are going. Okay, just making sure you're still doing the right thing, and then a certain age where like I think it was like 11th grade where he started really getting in some trouble in school.
So was there when he was a little bit younger, was there a circle of friends that he hung out with when things were kind of going well?
Yes.
What you would normally think is the normal progression of a young teenager at
Correct.
that point in time.
Running motorcycles in the woods, having fun, or biking and skateboarding. He loved skateboarding, and having excuses, coming home late or whatever, which is fine,
typical teenage behavior to a certain extent. Right?
Correct.
But and no sign of any type of a drug involvement or alcohol involvement at that time.
Late, coming home late, and always having excuses. But like I said, still checking where I think he's still on the right track. Making sure where do you go to. You can't be with him 24 hours a day. And then I think it was around like 10th, 11th grade where he started going downhill where he got in trouble in school with drugs. Was
there a change of his circle of friends at that point in time?
Yeah, he still had the same friends. Pretty much the same friends.
Okay.
Yep. Ended up getting a girlfriend, and she was a little older and stuff. Where he seemed pretty happy. They were always together and all that.
Yep.
And then again, same friends, and that's where I seen a different change. Where he ended up getting kicked out of school. So
a significant behavioral change was taking place. He's a junior now.
Correct.
He's a junior, and he's getting kicked out of school for being a wise guy, or academics, or a combination of both.
Yeah, both. Pretty much both.
Okay.
Just no tolerance.
Zero tolerance from the standpoint of the school.
Correct. Yeah. And where they just they didn't want it. And that's where it was just changed. I'm like, okay. So then we had to go see the principal. And where he said, you're going to be expelled. Either you sign yourself out, or you'll be expelled, for having marijuana.
Okay.
And that's where
that goes back to the zero tolerance piece.
Correct.
Sign yourself out. You made the decision to leave on your own.
Correct.
We'll turn a blind eye.
That's right. You can go to another school, or night school, something like that. So we'll give you an opportunity where, we don't want to ruin you. Get an education, but you just can't get it here.
Right.
So
he's in the 11th grade, and that's back about 2011, maybe 2011.
Yep, 2011, I think it was.
Yeah, 2011.
Yeah, 2011. He was graduated in 2012.
Yep. Okay, and he signed himself out. Is that what ended up?
That's exactly. Yes, that's what they call it. Sign yourself out.
He signed himself out.
That's right.
He's at an age where he's able to do that.
Correct.
From the standpoint of the school.
That's right.
Even though he's not 18 and quite a legal adult.
That's exactly right, which I couldn't understand. Like I said, I was learning all this stuff. Like, I just don't get, okay, you sign yourself out.
At the age of 16, a child.
I was parent, correct,
Yeah.
and that's where the little changes with Levy. Like, okay, he can sign himself up, but it was kind of a good thing where, okay, now we can check out night school.
Right. Okay.
And where now he's not getting along with kids in school or whatever he's doing. They just don't want him there. He's disrupting the class, and people want to learn, and they're just not going to put up with it. School.
And you can't blame the schools, to a certain extent from that perspective. And
correct.
And when you think about the timing there back in 2011, that was just before, maybe a year or so before what we now have here in the South Shore is the Recovery High School.
Correct.
Where had had the option to be able to go into the Recovery High School and not only continue the education component of achieving his diploma, but would also be an environment for counseling, during the course of his studies at the same time.
Yes.
And again, that was something that here in the Commonwealth, we know that there were 3 Recovery High Schools prior to the one coming here in 2012, that we have now here, actually here in the city of Brockton. It's located in the city of Brockton, but it's a regional program supported by the Department of Public Health that reaches out to all of the communities throughout the South Shore.
Wow, it's the first I really heard of it.
And it's a very excellent program, quite honestly, for those students who are at a point where addiction is affecting their education, and they're allowed to attend this particular school, continue their high school education, receive a diploma from their community school system, as well as have the treatment, the counseling available to try to keep them on the right track. So that wasn't available, unfortunately, back in 2011. Okay. So he's kicked out. You're investigating night school options.
Correct. And there was a place in Stoughton. Stoughton High had night school.
Okay. Yeah.
And which he was doing very well. They actually even had a write-up on him in the class, and teacher loved him. He was doing great. And so okay, now you can. It's kind of, I guess, you can still get your diploma at night school.
Yeah. So it's an evening school that allows you to get the diploma versus the GED component of it. That many that drop out of high school end up going back to like the local community college or something to take a GED exam and the equivalent of a high school education.
Correct.
But it's not a diploma. From that perspective there. Okay. And so did he complete that successfully?
He didn't. No.
He did not.
No.
Okay. So again.
He left again. Yep. Thought he was going to just go to work and start working, doing roofing and stuff, and different odd jobs, getting jobs pretty quick too. Good-looking kid, he got some quick jobs and just never lasted him. They were just real going fast, like within a week.
Basically working to pay for the addiction and
correct.
And
yes.
going out on the weekend and
yep.
Right.
Yeah, and then they just no tolerance again. They don't want, he just couldn't help himself. It just
anybody who's running a business got to have the employee who, is going to work within the parameters of the organization and not screw up.
That's right.
Basically speaking. So during all of this aspect, you as a parent are seeing what's going on. Were you reaching out for any type of assistance that might have been out there in relationship to counseling, detoxing, or anything of that nature?
Yes, actually. Just prior to that, he ended up in the Brockton, a couple of Brockton facilities, like the Castle when he was younger.
Castle program, yep.
Great program. He was one of the oldest in there, and he seemed like that helped him a lot, which is great. But then at a certain age, that only goes up to a certain age as well. Then we get out of that, he was doing okay. Then also going back, then High Point. He was in High Point, and a couple of his friends, one of his friends' mom worked there, so got him in there.
Was that High Point here in the Brockton,
Brockton,
down in Meadowbrook?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was that a section situation? Or was
the Castle was a section situation.
Okay.
And then he was in High Point, I think, twice. And one of those times from Taunton, they sectioned him.
Yeah.
It was a section, which is hard to get it. It's just, I guess it's a real tough, we've been through it a few times.
Right.
It's just tough for the parents to go through that where, a section, I guess they have to get you that day, get you in there and, send you to court, and the judge has to section you, and it's just a hard process.
The Section 35 process is a very difficult, emotionally draining experience for the parents who have never gone through it.
Correct.
But obviously it's a step that one takes when, there's a evidence of harm that could happen to the loved one, in this case the addict, or more importantly, what the addict might do to somebody else out there in society.
Correct,
You know,
correct.
getting behind the wheel of a car while under the influence, you never know what could happen.
Correct.
In that respect. You know. So it's a great tool, actually, but it's a really emotionally difficult roller coaster to stand there in front of a judge and say, I need you to commit my son because he's out of control.
Correct. And then your son's like, what are you doing this for me? You're the worst parent in the world. And, you know,
Yeah.
you know, and you feel the guilt.
Every descriptive adjective they can come up with,
yes,
you know,
yes.
to make you feel guilty.
That's
from
right.
That perspective.
That's right.
Haven't done it twice with my children. I've been there and walked in those shoes, and but I wouldn't second guess it the second time. And I encourage it for most parents out there. You know, so during that time, he's basically escalating in his addiction, issue. Is he gone from marijuana, pills to heroin? I mean,
correct.
It's just kind of
yeah. From what I understand, how it worked, marijuana to pills, exactly. Perks, tried a perk or something like that, and then he started doing a lot of perks, and then one time just trying, heroin. Somebody saying, "Hey, try this,"
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And his friends, good kids from Easton, nice kids, and who he's hanging with and all that, and good families and all that, and no one's knowing this is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Cruising around with this addiction, I guess.
Yep.
Start stealing their parents, all the jewelry and all the stuff. Everything's missing. I noticed stuff, I remember getting a mountain bike and it was gone. Like, where's that bike? I'm not thinking nothing of it. Like, all this stuff's gone.
Yeah.
PlayStations, everything you get them for Christmas.
So in order to feed the addiction issue, the criminal activity sinks in.
Yep.
Now, was he ever arrested or for any of that?
Yeah, so he got arrested, him and his friends, for taking, one of his friends' family's jewelry and stuff. And
okay.
So now he was on probation for that.
Yep.
And now, if he stayed good, he was getting off.
Right.
But where I was worried, where he was getting off, now we have no control. Now the court has no control. So that day, he was all messed up, and his mom had him sectioned that day before he got off probation, so we could do something about it.
Okay.
Because if not, now he was starting to become his own age.
Yeah.
A certain age where
he's
he
of
can
age
do it.
where he's an adult now.
Correct. We can't do nothing about it.
You can't do anything. You don't have any legal right as he turned 18 years of age at that point in time.
Correct.
And even though even though he might have been on probation, there are still restrictions of the probation that need to be followed.
Correct.
And as we see too often, kids that are placed on probation because of illegal activity caused by their addiction probably can't maintain the probation timeline because they just gravitate back to the drug, and when they do the drug tests, random drug testing as part of probation, they fail.
Correct.
And after one or two times, you might get away the first time. Second time, the judge is just going to look at you and say, "You've got a year hanging over your head. Just go back in."
Correct.
Which is it right? Is it wrong? Well, it's the system that we're working
That's
on
right.
today.
As a parent, I don't want to see my son. Okay, his life's going to get ruined. So, if he has a record now, he's not going to be able to change. He can't get a good life. So I was at that point where, okay, I'm at right where the level I can help him. He have no record.
Yeah.
But he has to help himself too. And that's where he was at, where he wasn't helping himself.
Yeah. And as we all learn in the addiction world is that if the addict isn't ready to help themselves, nobody's going to help them. I mean, it's a tough way to learn, but it is a fact.
Correct.
How about yourself in the concept of a parent? Were you reaching out to any of the support groups like a Learn to Cope in regards to guidance and so forth?
We tried to Learn to Cope. We had Al-Anon in Easton. There was a class there we started to learn. And, it was pretty graphic from what we were getting into. Like, a lot of these kids, a lot of these parents lost their kids and stuff. And it was just like, we weren't ready to hear that. And, it's the true thing of coming in like, hey, you need to hear this stuff because it can happen to you.
Right.
So we weren't ready for that. It was just, there's a level of, we weren't at that level yet.
A denial.
It pretty much that's what it was. A denial level of okay,
denial of what could happen.
We're not here, but no, we're stronger than that. It's not going to happen to us.
Not my kid.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Correct.
Was there during the course of the addiction issue, and we're talking, he's 11th, 12th grade, and so forth. Actually got kicked out of school, actually. I'm sorry. He withdrew from school, I should say. But, didn't even finish the night school program. Was there, looking back, times that you thought you were helping him where you might have actually been enabling him?
Yeah, most definitely. Everyone's like, and that's where you learned, okay, yeah, just kick him out, and he had asthma and those certain things where, you were worried, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't, like, okay, is it better that he's here? If he's high, at least I know where he's at.
God,
same thing.
We've walked the same shoes because
Correct.
I felt the same way as that.
Correct.
Even though I know that, my son has an addiction problem, I felt that he would be safer underneath our roof, and even though my mandate was don't use drugs around me, around the house,
Correct.
If you're going to go out and get high, that's one thing, but you don't be using them. I don't want to find needles or whatever else, hidden in the corners or the ceiling panels or stuff
Correct.
like that, Yeah, we as parents enable our children with addiction issues, and we think we're helping them, and we're not.
Correct.
At times.
That's the love of it.
And that's one of the nice things about organizations like Learn to Cope is that, you go into a meeting there and you've got 50, 100 more parents sitting there that have experienced the same thing that you're going through, and they'll tell you what works and what doesn't
Correct.
work.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. Well, you're not alone, more
Correct.
importantly, absolutely,
That's,
positively, So, talk a little bit about leading up to his passing.
Yeah, so now at that point, he ended up, so now at that situation where the probation was, okay, he was getting off and he ended up getting in trouble, so now probation had him, where I felt a little better, where, okay, now it's not just me trying to fight him into going to get sectioned and all this and programs, and he always fought about it. You don't understand that. That's not me,
Yeah.
And so finally, he ended up, changing. He wanted, I guess there's all sorts of different things to help your addiction, shots and this and that.
Oh, the
Vivitrol shot.
There's the Suboxone, the methadone, and then the Vivitrol. Right.
Correct.
Now,
He always talked about a shot. That'd buy him time. Okay, I'm going to get this shot, and then he ended up in the methadone clinic, and I thought that was just
I mean, in a lot of ways, from a treatment perspective, when you look at the methadone, you look at the Suboxone, and more recently the Vivitrol is coming out, I mean, the methadone is really, I almost want to call it a substitute for the drug that, the opioid that might be, he might be addicted to, whether it's heroin, perks, oxycodone, from that perspective there. But what it does do, it represses the urges to get high, from that perspective, and it has to be taken every day. In the case of methadone, it's administered through a clinic. Usually you have to go in and take it at a methadone clinic type of a situation. The Suboxone, similar situation. It suppresses the urges of the opioids, from in the body, but it's a prescription, and you can get a prescription full of Suboxones, and because they almost become as resourceful as the drug itself out there. People start selling the Suboxone so that they can get the drug.
That's all I heard.
Yeah.
That was the word, Suboxone. I'm on a Suboxone. I need a Suboxone. I'm on a Suboxone.
Yeah.
So I heard the same thing, that you can get high. You can't get high off the Suboxone.
No, the Suboxone is not going to get you high. It's going to repel the urge to get high.
Correct.
But, at some point, again, when you're in that environment, you just gravitate back to wanting to get high. So a lot of people might be looking for the Suboxone in lieu of the opioid or the heroin or something to try to stay off it. So it became a commodity on the market to be sold.
Correct.
$5, $10 a pill, something of that nature. The interesting part about Vivitrol that I have come to learn is that Vivitrol is actually a shot that's administered into the muscular part of the body that lasts up to 28 days. So it's, once every 28 days you could go in and get a shot of Vivitrol, and it repels that urge to get high from the perspective. So you're going to see a transition taking place, I think, out there in the addiction world, where Vivitrol may become, and Vivitrol's been out there for a while because it's also used to repress the alcohol cravings that are out there as well. So, I mean, I'm not a clinician. I don't want to promote it, but I mean, from the perspective of what I've understood in talking with some of the clinicians out there, it is maybe the easier of the three suppressants to control the addiction urge, and it's can be administered once every 28 days. Even though in the last so-called 5 or 6 days, its potency weans down. So it's something that's out there. that in the recovery world is becoming more and more available, out there. So, talk about the overdose itself.
Yeah. So, the overdose. I remember him calling me. I was supposed to take him to a meeting. I started taking him to meetings and whatnot, and I thought that was helping, and take him to church on Sundays, get him spiritual, try to really change his whole thinking, and I was like, it's something he has to change himself. So I'd give him the support. Brockton, I think there was a NA meeting over there. We went there a few meetings, a few times. Brockton, he knew more about than I did. He actually knew. He was showing me what this is here, go there. He knew all the meetings. And then when he overdosed, that was on a Saturday. It was, he called me. I talked to him that day, and I knew he wasn't right. He was on probation, violated probation. He ended up in New Bedford, actually.
Okay.
That's how bad it got, where he ended up in jail for 40 days. And he got out prior to that, and he was on supervised probation. And then that day he called, and I could hear it in his voice, he was messed up. And then a couple hours later I got a call, Eastern Police came to the house, and he was with a friend of his in Mansfield. And that's where, that the ambulance came, and they found him, and, he walked into the ambulance, and he ended up overdosing, cardiac arrest twice. And they took him to Sturdy Memorial.
Sturdy Memorial, down in Attleboro, yep. Yep. So he was out, and in some ways he may have been reaching out to you. You knew he was
we were supposed to go to a meeting that day.
Yeah.
And he didn't make,
Right.
he knew, and he was like, whatever. And and that was last time I heard of him.
Yep. And it's that knock at the door. I can't imagine what that must be like as a parent. To have the police come up to your door and say, we need to let you know.
Correct.
That your son. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I wasn't home at the time. I was working, and my daughter, she's 13, she called me, saying, Mom's flipping out. The cops are at the door, and I could hear it, on her phone.
The anger.
I could hear it, screaming and all that, and she's like, "You got to get home. We got to, Evan's in the hospital. It doesn't look good, And I could see, Maddie all nervous and stuff, and so then I just rushed home, and then we drove into the hospital from there.
Yeah.
We ended up, he ended up on the machine for a little bit, and just too much. He lost too much oxygen.
Okay. From the overdosing
Correct.
And again, when we talk about the availability of Narcan to repel an overdose, we only just recently, in the last 2 to 3 months, saw the availability of Narcan kind of go county-wide, whether it be
correct.
Plymouth, Bristol, stuff.
I went to that Taunton and met with Chris Herron and whatnot, and got interviewed for that. And,
right.
And good that they started talking about it, trying to really help. And like they said, I guess, they're showing how they're saving people's lives.
Exactly. I know that the city of Quincy took the lead on that going back, in 2010, and there's been hundreds of reversals.
Correct.
From the standpoint of.
And we had it. I had Narcan in the house. We got that.
So but
he's not home.
He's not home. Right. Yeah. So as part of the support mechanisms out there, you became aware of Narcan and had it
Correct.
on hand in the event that he were to overdose at home.
Correct.
Something of that nature, from that perspective as well. Again, preventive medicine, again, is only good when the patient is
if
there.
you're available to use it, correct.
From that perspective there. You mentioned the wife, the daughter, what was the impact on the family from that perspective?
And I always said that, where, Ev, you destroy our family. That's what will happen, you know what I mean? That's what it's going to get destroyed if you get on the right track, But it's been tough, every day waking up crying, and it's just now we have to take care of her and watch her, and very hard
hard for her, I'm sure.
Correct. growing.
Just
Now
the
she
two-
goes to
is it-
school and
yeah.
she's in Easton. People see her and her friends, and and they give you that look of
Oh, that's the daughter of the kid
Yeah,
who overdosed,
exactly,
or the sister of the
correct,
kid who overdosed.
you get that stigma of
And that's a real issue that families are confronted with. Same thing. When you mentioned going back to the criminal activity. All of a sudden your neighbors are looking over the fence and they don't want to associate with you because
Correct.
your son or your daughter is an addict, and they're afraid they're going to get ripped off next.
That's right, correct.
So
And you don't want to put them in that
it's
situation.
kind of a shunning.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
From that perspective there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, when you go back to those support groups like a Learn to Cope, you find you're not alone.
Correct.
And there's a tremendous amount of resources out there that are willing to share in that pain and that struggle, and get you through it, as I'm
Correct.
sure you're finding out, when your son passed back in January, of this year. What would you say to parents out there today that might be, dealing with a similar situation, a young child, a loved one who's is an addict or dabbling in the drugs? What would you say?
Which I have been helping a couple of people lately. I had an issue with a girl I knew. Her son was an addict, and I says, she had no idea. She learned from my son's experience. She started asking me questions about it. I told her, I said, get him to a meet. I took him to a meet in Dorchester. He ended up in jail for 3 days. Never met. He came to the Dorchester meet, and he was just cold. Didn't want to hear it. Same thing, Suboxones. I had a friend of mine who was a street person, talked to him. For a good hour he listened, but he just wanted to appease his mom. And, she was always, I was texting him, how is he doing? He's doing good. Well, now he just passed away 3 weeks ago, 24 years old.
24 years old.
Yeah.
And it's...
And he said the same thing. They don't know what they were doing. I'm not that person, telling his mother,
Right, yeah. I mean, it's real tough, for all of us as parents and loved ones to, grasp the fact that the drug is what's talking, and causing the actions of the addict to take place. It's not the individual. The individual doesn't exist when they're an addict.
Correct.
Not the individual as we know them as our son or that daughter, and so forth. So it's real tough, but parents have to understand that it's not the kid, it's the drug that's doing the talking, and we need to do everything we can to support them and get them the help, short of enabling them, because that's a very fine line, from that perspective. So we've only got about 30 seconds left, believe it or not.
Wow.
Anything about the pictures that you want to just kind of...
Well, yeah, it was just something where, here's you see like a normal kid who just grows up in a great family, happy, always smiling, and at some level the drug just takes your mind, and it changes you, and puts you in a dark place, and it's a mind. It's not. It controls your mind. The addiction. Everyone's like, oh, and that's the thing. It takes you over.
It truly does. John, I want to thank you for coming here this evening and sharing with us, the story.
Thank you,
and from all of us, condolences obviously on the passing of Evan, and beautiful young man. It can strike any family, any community.
Yes.
This isn't a minority community. This can affect anybody anywhere
Correct.
across the Commonwealth. On behalf of all of us here at A Deadly Silence, thank you to John Greene sharing us the story, and we'll see you next episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.